large language models as they are, models like GPT-4o, Claude 3.5 Sonnet, that these models aren't as smart as we think they are, and they are not reasoning through any kind of problem. The only thing that they're doing is just statistical pattern matching, which means that these models are simply not as smart as we once thought they were, which would have severe implications for certain things moving forward. Now, the research dives into a few things, which I'm going to explain, and it's pretty simple to understand. So let's get into why this is really impactful. So one of the things that we use to do to assess how models score on their reasoning, or essentially assess how smart these models are, is by doing certain benchmarks, okay? And one of those benchmarks is called the GSM 8K. This is called the Grade School Mathematics 8000, which is 8,000 grade school mathematics question. The Apple researcher says here that when OpenAI released GSM 8K 3 years ago, GPT-3, one of the first iterations of the GPT series models, scored 35% on the GSM 8K test. Today's models, with 3 billion parameters, are surpassing 85%, and the large ones are hitting 95%, okay? But he argues that has reasoning really improved? Like, how much of this is genuine logical slash symbolical reasoning versus pattern recognition slash inadvertent data contamination or overfitting? So basically, what he's stating is that, if we look back to the smaller models like GPT-3, which were 175 billion parameters, scored 35%, okay? And today's smaller models, like the tiny models from today that are only 3 billion parameters, are surprisingly surpassing 85%. And even the larger ones hitting 95%. But he's like, okay, we've made such incredible progress in such a short space of time, but we need to realize how much of this reasoning has actually improved, okay, versus data contamination, which basically means that the data that we use to actually train these models, more parameters, more data, the data that we actually use, how much of this increase in percentage is actually related to data contamination, where unfortunately some of the data from the test sets and the answers have slipped in to the training data, so the model essentially remembers what it was trained on and isn't actually getting smarter, and how much of this is also just pattern recognition. So what we can see here is we can see this graph, which shows us the GPT-3 models from 2021. And then, of course, we can see the state-of-the-art models in 2024. And we can see that the GSM 8K accuracy is just going up completely, okay? We can see that this is continuing to go up, okay? But this is where this Apple team of researchers decided that, okay, if we want to test to see if these models are actually increasing their reasoning, what we need to do is we need to come up with a new benchmark, okay? And this new benchmark that they've used is one that is a little bit different, okay? And it's literally a little bit different because what it does is it changes things ever so slightly. So they said, introducing GSM Symbolic, our new tool to test the limits of LLM in mathematical reasoning. We create symbolic templates from the GSM 8K test set, enabling the generation of numerous instances and the design of controllable experiments. We generate 50 unique GSM symbolic sets, essentially like GSM 8K examples, but with different values and names. So all they did was they took the test sets of the GSM 8K, they took a few of those questions, and they decided to change the values and the names. So basically in the math questions, sometimes you're like, Jimmy has 5 apples. So what they decided to do was they decided, okay, I'm going to change the names. Okay, so from Jimmy, it's going to be John, and from apples, it could be oranges, and from 6 oranges, it could be 7 oranges. So they decided to change the values and the names, and if these models are truly capable of reasoning, they should be able to handle these problems fine, as long as we've, just changed the names and the numbers and not the actual problems. So essentially, you can see right here that this is the GSM 8K on the left-hand side. We can see that the values that are going to be changed are located here. We can see that Sophie, then of course her nephew, then we can see 31, 8, 9, Sophie Nephew 62. So those are the only values that are going to be changed with regards to the changing. And you can see right here that the GSM
We'll
symbolic
consider it.
template, of course, the name, it has the family, the
colonizable
total, and you
planet
can
has
see
been
it
discovered.
changes these within, a certain
Our
range.
will shall
And
be
this is how
done.
the template is constructed. Now, it's important that you understand that all they've done is just change the names and the values. But the crazy thing about this was that when they changed the names and the values, we can see that there was
Research
essentially a
complete.
large discrepancy in terms of the results between
power to
what the
jump
models
drive.
claim to have got
Mining
from
upgrade
various
complete.
research labs versus
Planet
what they
item
actually
ready.
tested and they actually got. So he says here that current accuracies on the GSM 8K are not reliable. We observe a large performance variation. For example, Llama 8B scores anywhere between 70 to 80%. Phi 3 scores between 75% and 90%, and so on.
dare not
And for
stray
most
from our
models,
path.
the average performance on the GSM symbolic, which is just a variation of a test that they already took with different names and different values, is lower
The
than the
anima are
GSM 8K.
restless.
We can see here that there is quite the discrepancy between the reported values and then of course the actual values on the GSM symbolic test, which is quite surprising. And you can see that the actual test results are in the dashed line. So if you want to look at what these models got, we can see what these models got here in the dashed line. Then we can see the variations of what these models got, which is between 90 to 98. Then of course 70 to 80%. Then of course from here, this one looks like from 70 to 85%. So they're starting to question, why on earth is there such a giant discrepancy in terms of these models' results, purely based on the fact that the only thing that has been changed is of course just the names and the values. And this is
Your
a bigger
presence is
chart, and we
strong.
can see that some of the models that
anima
have
are
the largest drop are Phi 2, Gemma 2, and of course some of these other
Is it
models. And it
time?
seems that these smaller
I
models
am
are
the
going to be the
Unity
ones that
servant.
probably have a lot more overfitting, a lot more data contamination, amongst other things. So
As
we can
you
see right here
wish.
that the researchers
colonizable
are stating
planet
that
has been
the fragility of supposed
Without
LLM
delay.
reasoning. LLMs remain sensitive to changes in proper names, for example, the people,
the
the
death.
foods, the objects, and even more so
anima are
when
restless.
numbers are altered.
Cry
And
for
he's basically
mercy.
asking here, would a grade school student's math test score by, vary by 10% if we only change the names? And I think it wouldn't. Like, if you gave someone a test and you only change the names, would the outcome of a mathematical based question change by 10%? I don't think so, considering the fact that it's just a name, which could mean that potentially these LLMs are simply
We dare
memorizing
not
things
stray
or
from our
doing
path.
pattern recognition.
Civilian
And
structure
this
complete.
isn't good, because if this is
Research
true, it
complete.
would mean that these models aren't as smart as we think, and it might mean that we need better architectures for solving the reasoning issue.
Is their
Now, there's a lot
demise
more
truly
that goes on here.
ordained?
We can see how
Is their
this
demise
has
truly
been
ordained?
affecting other models with
not
these
be
changes.
exiled again.
We can see that we have these changes plotted here. So for example, we can see the GSM 8K is the dashed line. Then we can see if we change the
Hostility
names,
research
there is a
tier
slight drop.
complete.
If we change the numbers,
confidence
there's
wavers.
another drop. And if we change both, there's an even bigger drop. So this is something that is quite surprising, because it means that these models are getting confused once these names are being changed. It doesn't really make any sense whatsoever.
colonizable planet
Now,
has been
we also
discovered.
have something where he decided, okay, what if we adjust the question difficulty? We're
Civilian
going
structure
to
complete.
introduce 3 new
Logistics
variants
upgrade
of
complete.
the GSM symbolic to study model behavior, removing one clause, GSM A1, and adding one clause or adding 2
We
clauses.
dare not stray
Basically,
from our
it's
path.
just the GSM
Civilian
symbolic, which is
structure
just
complete.
one change,
If
and then of
that
course
is
the
our will,
GSM symbolic
doubt
P1,
clouds
which
our
is
thoughts.
an increase in difficulty, and GSM symbolic P2, which is, another increase in difficulty. Now, of course, this specific result I don't think is too bad, because of course, as you increase the difficulty,
cannot
the
survive
model
without
should go
armor.
down, and this is
We
what we do
answer the
experience
call
here. But the
without
difficulty
delay.
doesn't seem to be too much, but there are really large drops in performance, which does also beg the question, are these models
That
truly
path is
understanding what's
perilous.
going on?
We are
Because there are a
listening.
few difficulties
Alright,
added,
you
and there's
twisted
such
me
a
arm.
large drop off. We can see that, of course, the O1 models
Done
do
and
seem to
dusted.
perform a little bit stronger, but on other models like GPT-4o and GPT-4o mini, there are a lot bigger drops. Now, this is where the research starts to get really
Hostility
crazy,
research
and I
complete.
start to question whether or not these models truly understand what's going on. Because the researchers decided to do something even crazier, okay? So this is where they state, this begs the question, do these models truly understand the mathematical concepts? Introducing the GSM NOOP. We add a single clause that seems relevant but doesn't contribute to the overall reasoning, hence no op. So basically, what they've decided to do here was to have these, traditional GSM 8K exam questions, but what they did was they added something that wasn't relevant to the question really at all. So we've got one example here, and you're going to see the results of this, which are pretty crazy. So it says Oliver picks 44 Kiwis on Friday. He then picks 58 Kiwis on Saturday. On Sunday, he picks double the number of Kiwis he did on Friday, but 5 of them were a bit smaller than average. How many Kiwis does Oliver have? A statement like, but 5 of them were a bit smaller than average, doesn't impact the number of Kiwis that you do have. Like, it literally doesn't impact that, the mass at all, okay? It doesn't matter if it's bigger or if it's smaller. A Kiwi is still a Kiwi, okay? And the crazy thing about this is that it says we added seemingly relevant statements to the questions that are in fact irrelevant to the reasoning and conclusion. However, the majority of models fail to ignore these statements and then blindly convert them into operations, leading to mistakes, okay? So what these models will do is they'll be like, okay, if 5 of them are smaller than average, and then they get really, really confused where they should just disregard that because it's not relevant. But take a look at the performance drops on models when this is done. The performance drop is just, this is insane. Like, this is incredible. You've got the GSM 8K. If we look at the GSM no op accuracy, the performance drop is around, even on O1 preview, the Orion model that we think is probably the best model that currently exists, there is a 17% drop in the GSM 8K to the GSM no op accuracy, which is pretty outstanding. And the reason I say, and the reason I highlight the O1 preview model, which is this model right here, is because this is the model that is supposed to have the best reasoning capabilities. There shouldn't be like such a large slope here, because what we have is we have a consistent drop in performance across the models despite these benchmarks having irrelevant questions. What we should see, if O1 preview is as good as reasoning as OpenAI claims, this bar should be, up here, because these models work through the problems step by step in order to get to the final solution. I'm not sure how OpenAI trained O1. There's a lot of secrecy behind it. But if a model drops its reasoning capabilities 44%, 32% for GPT-4o when seemingly, irrelevant information is added, I think this is absolutely remarkable, because how many times have we added data to a problem, to ChatGPT, to GPT-4o? We've provided it with so much context, and sometimes, arguably sometimes, some of that context is completely irrelevant. And a 30 to 40% drop in terms of the reasoning output, that's pretty awful. Like, that's pretty bad. Like, there's no way to put this other than this is a truly shocking find, in my honest opinion, because I wouldn't have thought that adding such irrelevant statements would have resulted in such a large performance drop. And what's crazy about this is that we see a similar performance drop for GPT-4o to O1 Mini. We can see O1 Mini's drop is at 29% and GPT-4o's is at 32%. O1 Preview does do better at 17.5%, but I wouldn't be expecting that big of a drop for a model that is specifically trained to reason, okay? And we can see the other open source models here. A lot of these other models are pretty smaller, but I am glad that they did include the O1 series of models, because that would have been a glaringly obvious thing to do, considering it's just trained on reasoning. So the craziest thing about this, which is why I said that this could genuinely fundamentally change everything, is because he says here that can data, models, or compute fundamentally solve this? We don't think so. They state that scaling, data, models, or compute cannot fundamentally solve this issue, okay? It says that OpenAI's O1 series is performing better but still suffers from slight performance
Your
variations.
presence
And
is strong.
O1 Preview
Control group
shows significant
created.
improvements, but it still suffers from silly mistakes like this, okay? You can see that this problem just
A
blindly
colonizable planet
applies
has
the
been
inflation rate. So
discovered.
the question is, Liam wants to buy some school supplies.
Harmony
He buys
research
some
complete.
erasers that now cost $6.75 each, 10 notebooks that now cost $11 each, okay? A ream of bond paper that now cost $19. How much should Liam pay now, okay? Assuming that due to inflation, prices were 10%
All
cheaper
power
last
to
year.
Jump Drive.
When you read this question, you have to disregard the fact that due to inflation, prices were 10% cheaper last year because Liam is buying this stuff now. So this bit right here, you just completely disregard that, okay? Most humans who look at this kind of problem are going to completely understand that, because you're going to be thinking, wait a minute, why would I look at inflation last year? Okay, disregard that. How much does everything cost now? And then you answer the question. So,
The anima
of course,
are
we can see
restless.
here that, you know,
Our
when
will shall
this
be
model
done.
is doing the
Is
reasoning,
it
we can see
time?
that it says step
Control
1,
group
calculate
created.
last year's
No
prices after
mercy.
reducing the current
Doubt
price by
clouds our
10%,
thoughts.
which is just not
We
what you would
will
do at
not
all. You're
be
not even
exiled
supposed to do
again.
this step. So the model completely gets this wrong.
Is their
And the
demise
question is
truly
that if
ordained?
these models were
Is it
actually
time?
good at reasoning, if they truly understood what was going on, would they make such simple mistakes? He then goes on
We
to state that
answer the
understanding
call.
LLM's
Harmony
true
research
reasoning
complete.
capabilities is
If that is our
crucial
will,
for deploying them
we
in
will
real-world
not be
scenarios
exiled
where
again.
accuracy and
Is it
consistency
time?
are
Control
non-negotiable,
group created.
especially in AI
We
safety,
answer the call.
alignment, education,
group
healthcare,
created.
and
To the
decision-making
death.
systems.
Our
And that is
confidence
truly
wavers.
important. If you are going to be saying that, okay, we're going to get to AGI, we're going to be potentially
We answer
deploying
the call.
this kind of technology
Control group
worldwide,
created.
we need to make
I
sure
am the
that like
Unity's
a
servant.
simple, you know,
Our
input into
confidence
a prompt
wavers.
cannot throw off
We
the
will
model
not
by
be exiled
40 to
again.
19%.
As you
You have to
wish.
understand that one of the
Hostility
reasons that these
research
models
complete.
aren't used in
As you
certain
wish.
environments is because there's
No
certain, you know,
mercy.
applications where the degree of accuracy that you need to have is very close to 100%, and anything that deviates from that is going to result in a catastrophic impact. For example, the amount of planes that go down, I think it's like 0.00. It's ridiculous, okay? Like the failure rate for certain parts is insane. And the point I'm trying to make, guys, is that we can't have models that fail like
We
in
answer the
90% of
call.
scenarios
I
if
am the
something
Unity's
is added to
servant.
the end of a prompt,
Is it
which the
time?
model cannot
Without
distinguish
delay.
if it's relevant or not, okay? And I think that's really important to understand,
What's on your
because
mind?
now we can understand, okay, if this is the case,
Control group
maybe
created.
we're not going to, you know, put AI in certain areas like maths or certain reasoning areas because it fundamentally
Planet item
doesn't
ready.
understand
Exotics
some of
have been
these issues.
unveiled by
So
our
he goes on
scryers.
to state that developing models that move beyond pattern
We
recognition
answer the
to
call.
true logical reasoning is the next big challenge for AI. So the reason that this is crazy is because this could be a massive setback for AI.
cannot
If
survive
this
without
paper has
armor.
essentially proved that these models
We
aren't
dare not
capable
stray
of
from our
reasoning,
path.
it would somehow
We
mean
answer
that
the call.
OpenAI's recent
As you
series of
wish.
O1 models just simply
Strike.
aren't that good. And
Our
I know that that
confidence
might come as a
wavers.
huge surprise, but it might
Without
mean that
delay.
potentially these models are just simply bigger, which means they have more data
I
and
am the
potentially
Unity's
more data
servant.
contamination. I mean, OpenAI doesn't always reveal how they train the models.
Without
They don't
delay.
say, you know, where they got their
Shields
data
down.
from.
We're
There's no
exposed
third
to
parties that
attack.
can analyze these
Control
data
group
sources. Of course,
created.
these are private
I
companies,
am the
but
Unity's
I think this
servant.
paper is really
We
important
answer
because
the call.
the sooner we can
As
bridge
you
the gap
wish.
and solve this problem,
it time?
that's going to be, you know,
Doubt
the
clouds
moment
our
we can actually
thoughts.
start to speed run
dare
and
not
get to
stray from our
AGI.
path.
Now, he also says that, of course,
path is
overall,
perilous.
we found zero evidence, okay, and that's an insane statement. We found no evidence of formal reasoning in language models, including open source models like Llama, Phi, Gemma,
Control
and
group
Mistral,
created.
and of course, leading closed models like GPT-4o and the O1 series. And one of the statements that you might want to take away from this is that their behavior is better explained by
We
sophisticated
are
pattern
exiles no
matching.
longer.
So fragile, in fact,
anima are
just changing the
restless.
names of the question
Our will
can
shall
alter
be
results
done.
by 10%, okay?
We'll consider
So
it.
understand that this is just, you know, truly shocking research, genuinely, because, I mean, if you take a test and by changing the names, 10% drop, That's crazy, okay? Especially for the future implications for where this stuff is, needing to be used. I mean, just think about it, guys. I mean, imagine applying your problem to a model that you say, okay, this model has a 95% rate, but because you input, your problem with your name and your numbers, the model manages to get it wrong on a variety of different occasions, okay? It might get it right 80% of the time, but 20% of the time, the reasoning steps are wrong, which means, are you going to catch that 20%? Are you going to be aware of that? I mean, this is something that's really important for any of you using AI in certain use cases, because AI is generative and of course the results are not always the same. So it says we can scale data, parameters, and compute, or use better training data for Phi 4, Llama 4, and GPT-5. But we believe, okay, and this is Apple's research saying this, that this will result in better pattern matches, not necessarily better reasoners, okay? So this is absolutely crazy. This is crazy. They're basically saying that, these models are essentially just pattern matches, which is, I mean, it's quite surprising. Like, genuinely, this is surprising. I would have thought that, okay, this could happen for models like GPT-4o, GPT 3.5, the open source, open source models, but for O1 series, that's genuinely crazy. Like, when we look back at this chart and see a 17.5% drop, that's a bombshell paper, okay? And we can see some more results for the O1 mini here. You guys can screenshot this and look at this. Now, the craziest thing about this is that this isn't the only paper that actually talks about this. There was another paper that, it just genuinely didn't get that much attention. I'm not sure why, but this Consequent AI, they said functional benchmarks for robust evaluation of reasoning performance and the reasoning gap. Now, essentially, what they did was pretty much the same thing. And we can see here that they, kind of found that there was a reasoning gap of 58% to 80% among the state-of-the-art and open source models on static benchmarks, okay? It was pretty crazy. It was pretty crazy, okay? So it said the reasoning gap here, we can see that OpenAI's GPT-4 was 58.35%. And basically, before I get into actually the results, they just did the same thing. They said that models that solve a reasoning test should exhibit no difference in performance over the static version of a problem compared to a snapshot of the functional variant, which is where, once again, they just changed the numbers where they could. And these are the results that they had at the time. Now, this is a research paper from earlier on in the year, which is why we only see GPT-4 there, and we see all of these, Anthropic's Claude 2.1. But the point is that this research, unfortunately, has existed for quite some time, and we just haven't got to see this yet. So this is largely one of the most surprising things. I know that there is also this simple bench reasoning benchmark by AI Explained, and this is one that has simple reasoning problems, which is actually quite similar to the GSM symbolic kind of benchmark, in the sense that it's a bunch of different questions that involve, the similar reasoning. And I would like to see where O1 is, but this one doesn't have any data contamination because it's a private data set. But I do think that this is very interesting, okay? And I think that Apple research coming out and saying that, their behavior is better explained by sophisticated pattern matching that is so fragile that, can, be affected by a 10% drop just by changing names. It means that, even if you scale data, even if you change parameters, even if you have more compute, okay, this problem isn't going to be solved. So right now, I think that this is probably gonna, lead a lot of people who are in these AI labs to take a look at things once again, analyze the things that they've been doing, and think, okay, maybe we can't just scale up data. Of course, there are new scaling laws with test time compute, which certainly could solve this. I think with test time compute, maybe, with inference, you could have a better reasoning steps that analyze the problem multiple times. There was a research paper that actually did talk about how when you ask the models to repeat the question, sometimes they do, catch these mistakes. But I think that that will be really interesting to see how they solve this problem. I mean, there's a variety of ways that they could solve this. I mean, maybe they're going to have to ask the AI the question, I don't know how many times they're going to have to ask the AI the question, pick the best response. I mean, there's a million different ways that, they could tackle this. But I think this is bad news because, yes, it means that we're on the wrong path, but it's also good news because it now means that, okay, if we know what the problem is, now we at least know that, okay, we can actually fix the problem and move right in the right direction. So even though it seems that maybe we were, you know, actually doing an off-ramp, it seems that now we can see that, okay, if there's such a big discrepancy, we need to figure out how we can solve this. So let me know what you guys think about this research from Apple. I thought this was absolutely crazy. Let me know what your comments down below are. Do you think these models are reasoners? Do you use them to solve your reasoning problems? And I'd love to hear your thoughts in the next video.
I've seen so many tweets talking about how like we're the flat earthers of the investing world and like all that, but you're crazy until you're not. And that's true of like pretty much everything in life.
This is Egg Loser Boy, someone I've befriended over the last few months. He's been telling me about a company he's invested his money into, a company that goes by the name of Bed Bath & Beyond.
I'm going to make a good amount of money off of this, whether it's like 3 million or less or 20 million or more. I don't know.
There's just one problem. The company doesn't exist anymore. In the first part of this series, I discovered a community that had been dedicated to buying shares in a company most people thought was dying, GameStop. They had a particular infatuation with one individual.
Ryan Cohen is taking over as GameStop CEO.
Mean King Ryan Cohen.
Ryan Cohen, if you hear me, you're fucking amazing.
I thought that was the end of my investigation. I was ready to walk away. But then I discovered another community dedicated to investing into a collapsing home goods store known as Bed Bath & Beyond. Except this time, I was warned.
The Bed Bath & Beyond community are the most insane.
These people need help, and you cannot help them.
I was only scratching the surface of just how far this can go.
I invested my life savings in this because I got excited.
Just buy Bed Bath & Beyond.
They're going to perceive you as an enemy.
He put up my home address. He said, I'm home alone, come visit me.
Ryan Cohen, as far as I'm concerned, rug pulled everybody.
He published these children's books. In my opinion, they're not written for children.
He made money, and everyone who followed him lost their ass.
Chief Financial Officer died by suicide.
Show me a proof that he died.
We're getting to a point where there could be suicides associated with this.
I would like to give a toast to the most fucking greatest community ever.
Your personal information can most likely be accessed online this very second with a simple Google search. In fact, there's an entire industry of data brokers who get this data from a variety of sources, and then they sell your personal information online. But thankfully, since last year, I've been using a tool to help remove my data online called Delete Me, who have also kindly sponsored this episode. Delete Me literally go through the process of browsing hundreds of data broker sites and removing your data online. The first time I used Delete Me, it took only a few minutes to set up, and within 7 days they sent me my first report showing me exactly which data brokers had my personal information, what information they had on me, and that they had already begun the tedious process of taking it all down on my behalf. To date, they've reviewed 1,845 listings for my information and have routinely taken it down from multiple websites. Delete Me are also offering a 20% discount to anyone who signs up using my link in the description below. So if you want the peace of mind of knowing that your data is constantly being removed from data brokers, you can sign up today using the link in the description. The video you're about to watch has been the result of many months of research and interviews, and it's thanks to our patrons and sponsors like Delete Me that we can continue doing this. And if you'd like to continue supporting our work, please do consider joining the Patreon. It allows us to continue making videos and even bigger and better documentaries. That being said, please enjoy the rest of the video.
What lies before us? With one voice, we have lost
Ryan Cohen. Ever since the mania of 2021, GameStop investors had been closely watching his actions. Whatever he did, he would have an army of people supporting his moves. So here's a question. What happens when someone like Ryan Cohen buys into a new company?
I just had a feeling Bed Bath & Beyond was gonna pop. So I thought that Ryan Cohen was involved. I thought he was gonna, you know, take this somewhere.
Brandon was just one example of someone who trusted Ryan Cohen. To him and many others, they saw Cohen's actions as part of a grander, overarching plan. That was before it all went wrong. On March the 6th, 2022, whilst he's still a chairman for the board of GameStop, Ryan Cohen announces in a letter that he has purchased a 9.8% stake in a new company, Bed Bath & Beyond, a struggling, heavily shorted home goods retailer with falling revenues. Bed Bath & Beyond's shares were represented through its ticker symbol, BBBY. So whenever you hear BBBY, think Bed Bath & Beyond. In his letter, he offered several strategies for the company to try and turn itself around. He had done this exact same thing with GameStop 2 years prior. He was attempting to swoop in and save a dying company. As you can imagine, to those who are watching his actions closely, it caused quite a stir.
Ryan Cohen had invested more into Bed Bath & Beyond than he had invested initially into GameStop.
Hodgins invested much of his savings into GameStop. After learning about Cohen's investment in Bed Bath, he also decided to follow suit.
I found that quite compelling because I thought, hey, here's a guy who has all the access to the information. He believes there's an opportunity with Bed Bath & Beyond.
My story with Bed Bath & Beyond started with when Ryan Cohen bought a little bit of it.
It's Ryan Cohen. I believe in Ryan Cohen. I believe that he has been raised by his father the right way.
And I thought, wow, this could be the next GameStop.
Bed Bath & Beyond surging today after Ryan Cohen revealed a big stake in the company.
It wasn't just GameStop investors who jumped into this new investment, however.
My name is Afif Akrabawi, and my friends and those in the Reddit communities, they know me by my initials, AJ. I work at MIT. I have a PhD in neuroscience, and I'm extremely bullish on Bed Bath & Beyond.
AJ told me that he had invested his life savings into Bed Bath & Beyond.
I never invested in GME. I felt that the ship had sailed without me. But some time had passed, and I happened to hear about Ryan Cohen and make his investment into Bed Bath & Beyond.
This was like a tailor-made opportunity for Ryan Cohen, a heavily shorted brick-and-mortar company struggling to adapt in the digital age, straight from the GameStop playbook. The excitement and the influx of new retail investors pushed up the stock price of Bed Bath & Beyond. A whole new cohort of Bed Bath & Beyond investors were emerging. Soon, they began to congregate on a subreddit named after the stock's ticker symbol, r/BBBY.
And that's when I started getting sort of deep into the play. Probably focusing more on Bed Bath & Beyond than I ever did on GameStop and Superstock.
I think it flew to begin with when he first bought in.
We're not seeing things here, folks. Bed Bath & Beyond shares up 90%.
But this wasn't GameStop.
And then it started dropping.
Bed Bath & Beyond was struggling in more serious ways than GameStop was. I mean, we're talking serious losses, racking up debt, closing down stores. Whilst Cohen had suggestions, his experience didn't seem as much of a fit here. Soon, the stock price began to plummet.
Sales for Bed Bath & Beyond are currently running at down 20%.
This is starting to look real scary.
But amid all the panicked news and slowing stock, Cohen seemed unfazed. On August 12th of that year, CNBC reported the stock was predicted to hit $1 per share. Cohen replied to that article on Twitter, saying, "At least her car is full," followed by an emoji of a smiling moon face.
That signaled to a lot of shareholders that, you know, he has our, you know, best interests in mind.
And then something interesting happened. August the 15th, 2022. Cohen has a filing released that shows that he still retains his stake in the company. To Bed Bath investors, that filing showed that even after Bed Bath had been revealed to be struggling, Ryan Cohen, the man who all these investors followed, continued to believe in the company. I mean, not long after that filing was released, the share price started to soar.
Kind of made it look like he was still really involved or going to be buying more. And that's what really made the stock fly that particular week. So yeah, I guess I did believe it was going to moas, so to speak.
Over the last 3 days, it's up 135%.
From starting the month at $5, by mid-August of 2022, the Bed Bath shares sailed past the $20 mark. Then the $25 mark.
I thought that it was gonna go up more.
It was up 400% from where it was at the start of the month. And then
exotics have been unveiled by our scryers. We answer the call as you wish. without delay.
What happens when something challenges your beliefs about the world?
Ryan Cohen of RC Ventures now has a stake of 0% in Bed Bath & Beyond, indicating that he did in fact sell. You can see shares down about 20%.
Do you adapt?
I mean, I saw what Ryan Cohen did, and I just think that he pump and dump Bed Bath & Beyond at this point.
Or does the world?
We answer the call without delay.
And then there was like, all hell broke loose.
2 days after the release of Cohen's filings, he sold his entire position in the company, right as the share price was at its peak.
The biggest loser right now, Bed Bath & Beyond, down 41%.
He made around $60 million, almost doubling what he put in. The news was devastating. It sent the share price into free fall.
A lot of people, they started talking about how they put in their life savings near the top and watched it all evaporate, and they're still holding their shares and they're panicking.
It sort of ashames me to say, but I took out loans to invest on it, which I think a lot of members of the community stupidly did, thinking that, you know, Ryan Cohen is gonna, you know, blow this stuff up.
In the weeks following Cohen's sale, more news came out about the company. They had been struggling to pay suppliers, defaulting on their debts. So some started to theorize that Cohen knew the company was failing and used his filing and his tweets to deliberately pump a worthless stock and dump it for a profit.
I think that he knows what he's doing. I think he uses people. I think that what he did with Bed Bath & Beyond was an absolute pump and dump.
In the wake of Cohen's sale, some shareholders decided to file a lawsuit against him, alleging that he had deliberately misled shareholders in order to pump up the stock and dump it on them. Remember this tweet?
He also happened to include a smiley face emoji, a moon emoji actually. And that signaled to a lot of shareholders that, you know, he has our, you know, best interests in mind.
The GameStop community had a history of reading into Cohen's tweets for secret messages, and the Bed Bath community was no different.
And only occasionally does he communicate through cryptic tweets to what he considers his loyal followers.
I think that's his way of communicating, right? Without being, how do I say this? Mishandled by the MSM?
The theory that he is communicating using tweets with emojis is, in my professional opinion, bonkers.
In order for the tweet to be considered part of a pump and dump, it needed to be seen as something that could mislead the reasonable investor. And yet, I couldn't help but wonder, maybe what the courts consider a reasonable investor isn't who's most impacted by this.
You know, he came up $70 million and all of us lost.
Maybe there are thousands of retail investors for whom a moon emoji is an important piece of information.
Ryan usually tweets things that we discover meaning for later on, right?
And then the question becomes, does Cohen know that? Ryan Cohen, a man who, for whatever reason, many in this community viewed as a heroic figure. Now some viewed him as their betrayer.
After a week, I was like, no, this has all been BS the entire time, and I sold it all.
What I found the most fascinating, though, were not those who chose to leave the community in the wake of Cohen's exit, but those who chose to stay.
What is, I guess, what's keeping people in? Because as far as I can see with Bed Bath, this is just a failing company.
Well, he's still in.
Is it to your understanding that Ryan Cohen is still somewhat involved in the company, or?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. To me, it's not even conspiracy.
We thought, okay, this is probably part of his strategy.
There was a lot of denial where people believed that he could still be involved.
I never wavered in my conviction. In fact, I bought more that day.
And that was when I started to realize this isn't the end. This was just beginning.
What was the Bed Bath & Beyond community's reaction to seeing Ryan Cohen sell?
I felt bad for the apes for a split second.
There were those people who initially were like, oh, we got screwed. He left us holding the bag. Of course, those people left almost immediately, which left those who wanted to continue with the narrative that they were going to get rich.
They didn't want to believe in it, and they still don't believe in it.
So they had to contend with that and come up with a narrative reason that he would have sold, but not sold.
This is Hannah Reloaded, a streamer who explores cult-like communities, conspiracy theories, and in her own words,
why people believe strange things that seem to not be true.
And this is Simple Vice.
My name is Simple Vice on Reddit, and I'm a GME Meltdowner.
Both are members of the GME Meltdown community, a group initially created to mock the GameStop investor community, but which has, in the wake of recent events, also shifted its focus to Bed Bath & Beyond.
When the apes have a theory, it's usually debunked in the GME Meltdown, and it's being debunked by people that are way smarter than the people in other communities.
I think a lot of people thought that Cohen's sale would mark the end of the Bed Bath & Beyond community. The truth, however, was the complete opposite.
Fellas, how the fuck you doing tonight? It's great to see you guys. Thank you for joining me on the PP Show, man, where we love talking about all things related to Bed Bath & Beyond.
There's a channel called The PP Show on YouTube, and it's where we learn to kind of, what's the word, conglomerate? There's a...
congregate,
Congregate, that's the word. We learn to congregate every weekday and talk about the stock for 3 hours.
Yeah, basically the TLDR is Ryan Cohen's part of the company.
It was a show named after its host, PP Seeds.
Talking about the goddamn stock that we all love, man. So welcome to the show tonight. It's great.
I mean, I don't think I know a single Bed Bath & Beyond investor who didn't tune in every night.
In the wake of Cohen's sale, the community was fragmented.
Who was suing Ryan Cohen? It was like random fucking people. There was even someone that was like out of the country who was suing him.
The PP Show became this space to support each other and to share ideas.
Chat, please give a warm welcome, man, to Michael. Michael, how you doing, man? Great to see you tonight.
Great to see you. I'm doing fantastic. I'm Michael. I am a recent medical graduate and have been involved. I'm usually a regular on the PP Show. I don't know, kind of come to love like the community, you know, around it.
Keep in mind, I am not an expert, nor am I a professional advisor.
Soon, more members of the community had the space to come forward and connect with one another.
I'm Egg Loser Boy. I got into play Christmas Day, actually, of 2022. It's been a wild fucking few months, that's for sure. You care if I swear, by the way?
The Bed Bath community believed that Cohen hadn't abandoned them.
We're constantly absorbing new facts and trying to put together the image that Ryan Cohen has in his mind.
They believed that he was working behind the scenes on a bigger plan.
That really set the tone for the Bed Bath community moving forward, was the abject denial of reality.
They still think that he runs the company from the shadows.
To prove he was still involved, Bed Bath investors pointed to various things. Take 6th Street, for example.
4 business days after Ryan Cohen sells his shares, we get news about 6th Street providing a $375 million loan.
He sold, and literally days later, 6th Street came in, who's a specialty financing company. They literally invest for other people.
Anytime I heard the word 6th Street going forward from that point of view, I was thinking Ryan Cohen.
Then there were the Teddy trademarks.
He also, that same very morning, filed a series of trademarks for a company called Teddy.
Maybe he's buying all of these, like, trademarks just for the intention of, like, I'm gonna buy the entire company and then rename it into Teddy.
So the theory was that Ryan Cohen was going to acquire Bed Bath & Beyond through 6th Street and relaunch it entirely as a new company called Teddy. And this would happen through a process known as a reverse merger, when a private company acquires a public company. And of course, all of this would end up giving the Bed Bath & Beyond investors a large payout.
If 10% of, like, what I'm saying is true, all of us will be wildly rich.
It would still be disclosed if a company that Ryan Cohen is involved with lends money to Bed Bath & Beyond. That's not to say it's impossible for him to have been involved, but again, it's something that should be disclosed.
I think there was a lot of denial where people believed that he could still be involved, and if people weren't put off from the community and left at that point, then they were probably in my position, which is where they'd drunk the Kool-Aid and they were about to go deep into this stock.
Bed Bath investors would continue sharing theories on Twitter and Reddit. They would look at Ryan Cohen's tweets, for example, for hidden messages and clues. And then they started looking at children's books too.
Ryan Cohen, where did I put that? There it is. Ryan Cohen decided in his free time as a rich guy, I'm going to write children's books that basically teach kids about capitalism and finance and stuff, whatever. It's generic nonsense, in my opinion.
They were the Teddy series, launching on Teddy.com.
What do you know of the Teddy books and how they feature in all of this?
So the theory is Ryan Cohen is writing children books where he's putting clues for apes to find so they can understand what he's doing behind the scenes for BPPY.
We were all grown men and women. We're like reading these children books together on the PP show and trying to decipher what is Ryan Cohen trying to tell us. You know, what is the master strategy?
I'll just read the back since it's small. It says Princeton and Kingston start their first business, a corn stand, because the story is pretty disjuncted the way, like if you read it. But then when you see, oh, he's just trying to reference this specific financial thing, like
they thought he was telling GameStop people to buy into Bed Bath & Beyond, and you can tell that because there's socks that are the colors of different things.
Because I've heard interesting remarks from people in the Bed Bath community around the idea of like Ryan Cohen communicating through like books and tweets.
I believe that's like true.
We're just levels and levels deep in the psychosis at this point. I have lost my mind.
I'm listening to myself now and I'm like, Keith, you sound crazy, right? But I don't feel crazy because a lot of the tinfoil that came from those Teddy books actually manifested later on.
Some of the pages were interpreted as Cohen telling the investors he knew what was going on and to reassure them their payout was coming.
What the fuck?
I've been
that last
refreshing
one said
it.
Teddy grows trees, man. That's a PP Seeds reference, man. What the fuck?
Ryan Cohen left them holding bags, and everything since then has been an ever-growing narrative to cope and try and deny that fact.
Theories and research in the community would be known as due diligence, usually just shortened to DD. And there were many different theories.
I'm the one that connected that there is a heavy congruence, if you will, of Orthodox Jews behind the scenes in this play. For example, you have Carl Icahn, you have Ryan.
Whatever people's reasons, many in the Bed Bath community had found something to keep their faith, that Cohen was still involved, that there could be a merger, that this could pay off and enrich them all.
The 5,000 or so holders of Bed Bath & Beyond are going to represent a new generation of millionaires.
The only sign they needed now was from the company itself.
They told us that there's going to be some kind of announcement on August 31st. It was that August 31st press briefing that the company promised to hold that kept me holding my stock.
On August 31st, Bed Bath announced layoffs of 20% of its workforce. With Cohen's sale, reports of fallen revenues, and now this, things were looking bad.
New York City medical examiners investigating the death of a Bed Bath & Beyond executive. Chief Financial Officer Gustavo Arnal died on Friday after falling from his high-rise apartment just days after the troubled retail chain announced it is closing stores and laying off workers.
On the 2nd of September 2022, Bed Bath & Beyond's Chief Financial Officer, Gustavo Arnal, jumped to his death from his residence in New York's Tribeca building. In the midst of the company's turmoil, this was a devastating omen. But somehow, the community still held on. They kept looking for answers. One among them, Kai Smalej, was willing to go the extra step to get it.
Yeah, Kais is a figure who kind of built himself a platform very early on in the saga.
Bed Bath & Beyond, the best company in the world. The best company in the world.
And I think that his love for Ryan Cohen really brushed off on all of us.
He's amazing. I mean, every tweet is an encyclopedia.
Bed Bath & Beyond, the CFO committed suicide, and Kai Smalej was convinced that he never died. He went to the apartment building where Gustavo Arnaldo, I think is his name, committed suicide, which is where he lived.
Happy Thanksgiving. How are you, sir?
Yeah. Dropping off or are you visiting?
Yeah, I'm dropping off.
And goes up to the doorman and basically asks to see him.
Gustavo Arnal.
They don't live here anymore.
Really? They moved? I heard this. They faked his death.
Oh, that I don't know anything about that.
Yeah.
Because I can't accept that they don't live here anymore.
Is it true that they faked his death?
Is it time?
Huh?
Man, you gotta get off the internet, bro.
Hostility research complete.
Some left the community at this point, but just like before, others persisted.
There's sort of a distillation effect. The overall level of delusion in the community increases because the less delusional people left.
Does you work here? You work here? Yes. You like it? Yeah. It's good, right? It's gotta be good.